Doc, this quest to contribute, and I like the fact that you mentioned the continent in the area of education, which you see as a very key component of our developmental effort. What, if I narrow it down on Ghana, what would your ideal Ghana look like? What would be your first prescription in your ideal Ghana?
So I think I've spoken about this already. I think it's providing relevant education for young people. And I emphasize relevant because times have changed so much, and curriculum content hasn't quite changed at quite the same rate. We need to look at our problems contextually. What jobs do we even have available in Ghana for people to take? And probably maybe we should even work backwards on that. So that by the time young people leave, they're actually skilled enough to earn a living. Because as it stands now, there are many people who finish school and are not able to find a job or even, be able to execute a job in an acceptable manner because they just don't have the skill set to do so.
So relevant education to you is making the young people industry ready, if I may use that.
Absolutely. So, soft skills, I think that, for most of us who work with people, soft skills can be a real challenge. But beyond just the actual soft skills, there's mindset as well. We tend to find, and one of the projects I'm working on with Skill Up Africa is actually looking at a youth employment accelerator because can a senior high school student who has graduated be taught practically to start somewhere and progress up the career ladder without necessarily going on to tertiary education? And it's really just, just trying to change people's minds about, how education works. I think typically, and even you'll see that a lot of young people don't want to go to school and do visual arts or home economics because the idea is if you didn't do general science or you didn't do general arts, then the rest of it is for people who they can't do any better. But actually we need to, disengage young people's minds from that. What are you passionate about? What do you want to do? And you do a course that follows in that route, not because your friends are doing general science. Entrepreneurship is a big thing for Africa, not just for people to be small entrepreneurs, but getting people who will be able to create employment for other people as well. And then what I spoke about STEM, and I'm very passionate about that because I think there's a lot of careers that can be found there. Now the world has opened up so much that there's a lot of remote careers. So if we can even teach young people, technology-based skills, they can sit right here in Ghana and even earn foreign currency.
Actually, that last point brings me to the fact that increasingly, maybe one solution to our unemployment is to create that person who has the ability and skills to look for a job in another country whilst still living here in Ghana.
Absolutely, and there are industries. So you go to some countries where they have call centers. So in India, I think even in Rwanda, they'll have call centers there. They've invested heavily in that infrastructure so that you're in the UK, you're calling a call center, you're talking to somebody in India. How can we create now? The skills of the future. A lot of them lie in technology, artificial intelligence, how can we leverage? And to be honest, somebody does not need to go all the way out to university to be able to do some of these things. How can we pick young people much lower down and start teaching them, how to code, how to do robotics, how to do things that they can actually get jobs in, when they grow up.
So if I understand you right, we have probably even overemphasized tertiary as the ultimate, as it were.
100%.
That's an interesting angle to this conversation.
So if I had the opportunity, so now when I meet young people, if they're doing a course that can be done part-time, I encourage them to do it part-time and work. Because the idea of going to sit in university full-time for 4 years, if you can help it, obviously some careers, you can't go to medical school and do it like that, you can't go do architecture. But for the courses that can be done part-time, and I have a number of young people I work with who do weekend school or evening school, and they work, and because so somebody's done a 4-year degree, but by the time they finish, they have so many other skills as well, and that's something that I think that in this day and age, a lot of young people should consider.
Not everyone needs to go to university, and those are the thoughts of Dr. Naomi Agyepong. In my own words, you don't have to, and that's quite radical. What's your point number 2?
So point number 2 is we found ourselves in a situation where the government is struggling to pay its expenses, if I should put it that way. And so many times we see that there are a lot of government employees who may not necessarily be engaged in productive means. I think that is something that needs to be remodeled entirely, because there's a lot of roles that are being done that can be done, by fewer people, or technology can be used to reduce the number of people required to do it. And I think that there needs to be a rethink of how many people need to be in some of these roles, because it will drastically reduce the bills for the government, especially at this point. So that would be one of my prescriptions.
Have you heard of the TUC?
I have.
You will be very unpopular at the TUC.
I know. But that's why I said let's rethink. And rethink doesn't necessarily mean people should be out of a job. I think that if we can get people into more productive means, whether it's manufacturing, whether it's IT related, but something that will actually bring money in, I think that will help us as a nation as well.
What will be a third one?
Third one would be environment. I think that in this part of the world, especially because we're always thinking about our daily bread, sometimes it's something that we put on the back burner. But I think that it's important for us to think about the ways in which we degrade our environment. This conversation is a global conversation, and I think that it's time for us to also start thinking about ways, whether it's through recycling, whether it's, of course, we've had the big conversations around illegal mining and the water body contamination, but it's important for us to take intentional steps to make sure that in 5, 10, 15, 50 years time, we still have a Ghana to speak of.
One interesting prescription on environment was by Bridget Joboniku, who suggested that we should have competition. She says Ghanaians are very competitive, from national science and maths quiz to everything. We like to compete. So she's saying if it was the case, if there were inter-district and regional competitions on sanitation, people will raise the money to keep their regions clean just to win. What do you think? Well,
it's worth trying. It's definitely worth trying. I think I've seen that there's a big recycling plant around Kolebo, but I think that one of the bigger issues is we need to get our society to a place where people separate their waste, because that's where, if we're able to separate the waste, it makes it a lot easier to recycle. But some intentionality, I think, has to go into, okay, as a country, what are the things? There are some things that are easier to do than others. What are the lowest hanging fruits, and how can we explore those options now? Fourth prescription, develop a tourism industry. I think that Ghana has benefited in more recent years, the campaigns that have happened over the last 2 years, Beyond the Return, and I can't remember what the first one was called, Year of Return and Beyond the Return, have been great campaigns. And I think that they've definitely piqued people's interest in coming to Ghana, particularly in December. But I think that we need to leverage on that a bit more and think about, how we can create Ghana as a tourist industry, as a tourist destination throughout the year. How do we look at? We have so much here. A lot of them are quite spread quite far across the country. So even just creating ways for people to get from one place to another, making sure that we sort out hospitality, whether it's washrooms, whether it's, other things that people can do. I've been to countries that have a lot less than us and make a lot more money from tourism, from virtually nothing. Whenever I go, I get sad because I think, but Ghana has so much more than this. Just putting a bit of intentionality around how we promote tourism, not just in Accra, but throughout the country. And it will create so many jobs for us. If people come in, foreign exchange as well. Young people, I'm still going back to my young people, because we need to create employment for young people. I think that that's one of the avenues that we can use for that as well.
Would you call youth unemployment the biggest problem in Africa?
I think it's getting to be a big problem because of the number. I think it's a volume thing. I worry particularly about our security as a country and as a continent, because the more young people you have who you're not able to channel their energy in the right way is going to become hugely problematic. Crime rates, and now people are getting more sophisticated with the crime. So, because once they've gone to school, a little bit more as well, it's a worry. It's a huge worry for me because if we're not able to engage them in a productive way, I don't know what's going to happen.
So, Doc, we have providing relevant education for young people. That's your prescription, number one. Mm-hmm. Number two, remodel government employment, especially in the light of high cost of salaries. And I said that TUC will come after you for that one. And you say it's not really losing jobs. It's about rethinking how we employ people and what we need for every role. The third is about environment. We need to protect our environment. And the fourth is about developing our tourism. I like the idea of all year round and all nation round tourism. What will be your fifth prescription?
Well, so I'll bring my fifth prescription now to the community level. I'm sure we all know how difficult it is to get the services that we need at community level. Sometimes you wonder, you pay your property rates and you come and there's so many things that should be done that are not done. I think that perhaps one of the ways that we could get our municipal assemblies to deliver what they're supposed to deliver, but maybe we have to think about whether to vote in their leadership as well, because even as citizens, a lot of the time we're not aware of what they are supposed to do for us. We see problems, we don't even know who is responsible for that problem. Is it a highway issue? Is it a municipal assembly issue? I think there needs to be more public education, particularly around what to expect from our district assemblies or our municipal assemblies, who to go to if we have a complaint. And even I like the idea of even being able to rally around the community to solve some of the problems without necessarily having to heavily rely on the government to solve everything. There can be community initiatives that are brought up, maybe coordinated, let me put it, by the assembly, but maybe even done by individuals themselves. To see how we can improve, whether it's around sanitation, it's around the roads, it's around security and safety, lighting, I think that with some collaboration and coordination with members of the community, and I say community like everywhere, so not just even in Accra, where we're having issues, how do we report issues, who do we go to, how is the assembly evaluated against what they are supposed to do. I think that it will make a huge difference because it decentralizes, so if I have problems in Dansoman, then I know who I go to and I know who is responsible for doing it without necessarily always blaming the government for things that haven't been done.
Doc, you left your work outside the country to come and work here. Many young people are doing the reverse. Mm-hmm. They think they are tired of this country and want to go outside. Not necessarily because they have something to do. Some, yes, but others too, just anywhere. It's almost like ABG, anywhere banana. What would you say to that?
It's a tough question.
The first one is
That's the first one is So I think I mentioned to you before, in the end, everybody will make a decision in their own best interest. And I still stand by that because there are definitely opportunities. There are opportunities everywhere, but for some people, they may not feel that the opportunities are here. And if it becomes difficult to convince such a person.
When you talk to the young people, what do they tell you? You are a mentor. You deal with them on a day-by-day basis.
Yes.
And you, in your regular work, you deal with young people.
I do.
What do they say?
So I think what's happening over time is people are losing hope, and just when you think you're making strides, then something else happens. And people just think, okay, the better tomorrow, when is it coming? Because it just feels sometimes like they're going, slowly deeper and deeper into a very unknown place. For me, I try to keep the hope alive and try to, stay passionate towards the cause, because there are a lot of young people in Ghana and in the continent who need to be supported for the continent to lift itself out of where it is. So we can't give up just yet. But I don't think that there's not a one size fits all. If somebody is working in a career where they genuinely cannot get a job here, it becomes very difficult for you to convince them to stay.
In your earlier submission, you linked unemployment to national security. I liked that brief point you made. Would you like to speak to it?
So if people can't afford to eat, can't afford to make a living, no matter how hard they try, because I think that as Ghanaians, a lot of people work hard. I don't think it's for lack of trying. There are a lot of people who work hard, and in some ways it seems unfair because it's almost like the people who work the hardest make the smallest amount of money. And if people are struggling, you and I go into a supermarket and we've seen how food has increased by, over 60% over a very short space of time, and incomes haven't increased. If people can't afford to eat, then why shouldn't they steal? I think that we have to be very careful where we're headed, because when it gets to a point where someone can't eat and can't survive, essentially they don't have anything to lose.
Let me zoom in on your role as a business leader. We've done a couple of conversations on coping mechanisms for entrepreneurs. And so let's take a disruption like fuel prices, food inflation, exchange rate. I wanted to use a word I wouldn't use, but instability. Mm-hmm. And at the same time, to borrow your words, your staff want more money, mm-hmm. and rightly so. Mm-hmm. How much can you respond? And how do you cope with a situation where you genuinely want to do something but you're limited?
It's very difficult because you're coming right now. Costs are escalating all around. Operational costs, utility, so everything is escalating, and for majority of industries, client ability to pay is also compromised. Just like during the pandemic, nobody wants to take the hit, but at some point, it's either you're sharing the hit amongst everybody, or you'll find some other innovative way to do it. But we are entering a season which is, I think we all have to be mentally prepared for, as entrepreneurs, as employees, even as clients, because you sit in you have a hat as an entrepreneur, but you also have a hat as a client to somebody else, and I think that a lot of grace will have to be extended always, and we just pray that we come out of it quickly. That's the
right. So here we are with the 10 prescriptions from Dr. Naomi Agyepong of Alpha Beta Schools. Her first 5: stay focused. All things work together for your good. Keep a cool head. Aim at excellence in whatever you do. Don't be so enamored with what others are doing. Stay with your truth and your agenda. And then the 5th one is be humble and be kind. She says people are going through a lot of things. So in dealing with them, be empathetic and be humble and kind. Now on the ideal Ghana, she says we must provide relevant education for young people. And it includes, among others, submitting that not everyone needs to go to university. We should find alternative ways to channel people into their preferred careers rather than be hung up about everybody going to tertiary education. The second prescription for an ideal Ghana is to remodel government employment, especially with the high wage bill to governments, and rethink how many people we need for each role. Third one is environment. We must protect our environment. The 4th is to develop all year round, all nation round tourism. And the last one is to look at community engagement, probably vote for our municipal chief executives, district chief executives, etc., and then engage communities to solve the problems that confront us.